Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How are you? It is great to be back here with you again. I'm Wanda Curlee, your authority on project, program, and portfolio management. And this is brought to you by PM Powered, a company that brings you project, program, and portfolio consultancy. I look forward to speaking to you on these different articles that I found that have to deal a little bit with project management, but I also look at it from the aspect of the way your brain works and how we adjust to that. So the first article I have is about your brain. It says how your brain decides if a reward is worth the effort. So it talks about, for example, if you're one of those that clicks the snooze button, your brain actually does a cost-benefit analysis as to how many times you hit the snooze button. So at some point, you don't hit the snooze button, and that's because your brain has said, okay, my cost-benefit reward has now adjusted to the other side, that if I don't get up and get to work, or if I don't get up and get to my appointment, I'm going to lose out. So your brain actually does that in all aspects. I took the one about hitting your snooze alarm. But think about work. How many of us are procrastinators and leave something at the end of the day or right towards the end of when it's due because you just don't want to get that work done? Again, your brain plays a cost-benefit analysis to see how long you can put it off. So understand that your brain is working against you sometimes, and you've got to overcome that. But we all do it. And just be aware that your brain is doing that to you. So let's go to the next one. So let's talk about regulation. Things are regulated differently, and now it's time for technology to be regulated. So it says the biggest new laws to regulate tech giants and why they matter. So we have new transformative technologies coming through. And it says, such is the natural order of things. First comes the transformative technologies in the case of the car. Think about the car when it first came out. There were no regulations around it. And then it says public debates about safety, ethics, and the need for laws or restrictions. These conversations can continue for years or even decades. So think about the car. Think about how many safety items are in there now. Think about the laws about your seatbelt. When I was growing up, there weren't even seatbelts in cars. But now we have seatbelts. You have regulations on kids and how many pounds they have to be before they can sit in the seatbelt, how come they're rear facing, when they can be front facing. So there's a lot of things. So now we're talking about technology. And so there was protecting privacy. And I will say that the European Union is way out in front because they just launched on May 25th the General Data Protection Regulation, so GDPR, which caused a lot of angst with a lot of technology companies, but it's saving your privacy. The European Union is also getting ready to do e-privacy that allows you to wipe data clean if you like. So GDPR is legislation that applies to all 28 European Union members, and it states and shifts control to data to customers and away from technology companies. So we are now having more say in what happens to us. Sharing data. So on March 23rd, the U.S. signed into law the Clarifying Lawful Overseas Use of Data Act, or CLOUD Act. This allows federal law enforcement officials to compel U.S.-based tech companies, and there has to be a warrant, to provide requested data stored on servers, regardless of whether data is stored in the U.S. or on foreign soil. So think about that. A lot of us, if you use a laptop that's hooked up to the internet, most likely you've got a cloud that stores all your data because you want your data backed up in case your PC crashes. So now the U.S. government, if they have a warrant, can get into that cloud and look at your data. So it's not as private as you would like to think. Another thorny law enforcement issue, this article says, was dramatically illustrated in 2016 when Apple refused to comply with an FBI request to unlock a terrorist's cryptographically protected iPhone after a mass murder in San Bernardino. The phone was locked with a 4-digit password and was programmed to eliminate all its data after 10 failed password attempts. That is true on many iPhones right now. And Apple said that they would not open up the phone. And I can understand why they did that. Even with the warrant, they were able to circumvent it. So Apple had promised this special security protections to its customers, and it abided by it. So there are things going on. So there was a regulation of digital currency proposal was tabled in December, and in hearings follows. Testifying was John Cassara, an anti-money laundering expert and former law enforcement officer. And he says trying to follow money when it comes to digital currency is extremely challenging. Digital currencies are a small fraction of the threat that we face. That's not going to be the case in 5 to 10 years from now. We're right at a crossroads, he says. So this goes on and it talks about databases and everything else that are there. So understand that even though we, right now, we think that we're protected, the laws are catching up to technology, so it won't be long. But technology is going faster than what the laws are, so they'll always be a little bit ahead. So let's talk about the next thing that I have on the docket here. So the world's most powerful supercomputer is tailor-made for the AI era. So think about that. We now have computers that are tailored for AI, and that's just amazing to me because last year we weren't even talking about AI in those situations, but it comes from IBM, and it says Bob Pisciano of IBM says all this allows Summit to run some applications up to 10 times faster, tighten while using only 50% more electrical power. Among the AI-related projects slated to run in the new supercomputer is one that will crunch through huge volumes of written reports and medical images to try to identify possible relationships between genes and cancer. Can you imagine if this supercomputer can find a cure for cancer? Another will try to identify genetic traits that could predispose people to opioid addictions and other afflictions. So think about that. This AI can go through and make judgments as to whether things are related or not. That would take one person or a massive amount of people, hundreds and thousands of people going through that and trying to put it. Remember, we as people get tired. The computer does not. So again, I want to get back to your brain. And this next article says, stop flailing and start delivering. Here's how to gain clarity and focus when your tendency is to overcommit. And I think many project managers tend to overcommit because we want to get our project in on time. So it starts out by saying, given the pace of life today, it's increasingly common to feel overwhelmed by a blizzard of professional obligations. To-do lists grow despairingly long, calendars fill with meetings and calls, and even those with laser focus can struggle to keep up. I'm doing some consulting work for a company right now, and I'm amazed at the amount of meetings they have. They even triple and quadruple book some of their people, and I'm thinking to myself, how do project managers get things done? And I understand we have to attend meetings, but leadership needs to look at whether or not the person needs to be there. And the problem is when we double and triple book people is that when you go into the meeting, you're now not focused on the meeting. You might open up your laptop and start looking at emails, or you might look at your phone to see if you have text messages. Or if you're on Microsoft Teams, you may go into the chat room instead of focusing on what's going on in that meeting. So it's hard to think about that, but Carter Cass, a clinical professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at the Kellogg School, spent several years examining career derailment. And he has a book out. It's called The Right and Wrong Stuff, How Brilliant Careers Are Made and Unmade. He explores 5 common issues that impair career progress. Of these 5, this is the issue people self-identify with most frequently. So he recommends the following things. Be clear on what's expected of you. Many employers, at least on paper, have more responsibilities than any single person can realistically tackle. So make sure you get with your boss and you actually understand what you need to do. So for an extreme example, consider the high turnover rate among chief marketing officer. In 2016, the average CMO tenure at top ad spending firms was just 42 months. Can you imagine that? Being in the C-suite and only lasting 42 months? And then we wonder why people underneath can't keep their careers on track because they have such a turnover of leadership. Given that the CMOs are responsible for a broad range of specialties, from advertising to brand management to customer experience, they are always in danger of stretching themselves too thin. So think about that. If you're working on a project and it happens to be in the marketing area and you go through two different CMOs, you might derail your project management career because now the new CMO sees things differently. Understand your organization's workflow processes. If you are struggling to finish what you start, consider whether you are thinking deliberately about what each step in a task entails. Those who overreach tend to be creative people with lots of ideas, but an unstructured way of approach. So you have to be structured in the way you approach things. Be intentional about prioritizing your work. Don't just do it based on what you think is the person that's yelling the most. So he says by a certain point in our careers, most of us are used to keeping lists that outline what we have on our plate for today. But there's a difference between jotting down a few scattered items and taking a more systematic approach to prioritizing that list. So don't just start jotting down and going through it. Prioritize that list and prioritize it every day because priorities change. Learn how to say no. And I think we as project managers need to learn that. We need to be able to go to even people in the C-suite and say, no, I can't do that because of the following reasons. Don't just say no for no, but say no and explain it. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by your responsibilities, consider whether you by nature are a pleaser, as many high achievers are. Pleasers tend to take on more than they should. Their default response is yes, why not? But learning when to say no and learning to do it tactfully is critical for preserving valuable time and energy. So we've got to learn to do that. Look for opportunities to delegate. If you are a project manager, you've got a team working for you. So delegate some of the tasks to them. And you will be a more successful project manager. Delegation is all about leadership, and we as project managers do lead. So learn how to delegate. So let's think about the next thing that I have, and this comes from Singularity Hub. And it says, Microsoft's wild new project puts servers at the bottom of the ocean. Yes, they're putting servers at the bottom of the ocean. Can you think about that? Think about putting electronics at the bottom of the ocean. So last week, a few miles off the northern coast of Scotland, a cylinder the size of a shipping container was carefully lowered to the bottom of the ocean floor. Sounds like a clever, complex way to bury evidence or treasure or something similar and mysterious. But what's actually inside the undersea capsule are 864 Microsoft servers. The contents themselves then aren't all that enticing, but the details of the incredible project from one of the world's biggest tech companies are. So Microsoft says it has no special significance, completed its first in November 2015 after a similar vessel was deployed in the Pacific off the U.S. coast. Phase 1 tested the concept of subsea data centers, and the company was able to operate the lights out data center remotely and efficiently for extended periods of time. Can you imagine if we have data centers in international waters, and now you don't have to worry about the laws in different lands because there is no law. You're in the ocean and it's international territory. So it's very creative that we're starting to put data centers at the bottom of the ocean. So another thing that is said in this article is they'll also apparently be located underwater. 8 of the world's 10 biggest cities are on or near a coastline. And according to Microsoft, half the world's population lives near the ocean. And that's just one reason to store data there. Another reason is getting a storage facility up and running or down and bubbling underwater is much, much faster. Building a data center on land has typically taken about 2 years. through the time frame, although the time frame is dropping as technology improves. Microsoft claims its deep sea cylinders will take less than 90 days to go from factory ship to operation. Can you imagine building a data center in less than 90 days? And I think as they get more used to doing this, it'll take even less time. It will probably see data centers in the ocean going up and starting in 30 days or less. I think that's amazing to me. So let's go to the next item here. So addressing the ethical issues of AI is key to effective use. So AI is, by itself, technology is neither good nor bad, but we have to be able to understand that AI is a learning way, that's machine learning. And it's machine learned through programming by humans. So there's going to be different things about AI. So many enterprises are exploring how AI can help move their businesses forward, save time and money, and provide more value to all their stakeholders. However, most companies are missing the conversation about ethical issues. Even in the early stage of AI adoption, it's important for enterprises to take ethical and responsible approaches when creating AI systems, because the industry is already starting to see backlash against AI implementations that play loose with ethical concerns. So how are AI systems biased? So AI systems can quickly find themselves in ethical trouble when left inadequately supervised. One notable example was Google's image recognition tool mistakenly classifying Black people as gorillas, and the aforementioned Tay chatbot becoming a racist, sexist bigot. Can you imagine if your AI is starting to do this? How could this happen? Plainly put, AI systems are only as good as their training data, and that training data has bias. Just like humans, AI systems need to be fed data and told what that data is in order to learn from it. So we have to be able to put AI and need to try to take the bias out of it as much as possible. So my take on that is we need to have the people that program the AI need to be looked over by other people that maybe have different views of things. So make sure that your own bias isn't in there, because then the AI is going to have a bias. I don't think we'll ever get totally out of the AI bias, but as soon as we see that AI bias, the company needs to go in and fix it before it becomes a problem. Google now has to go back and apologize. They need to go back and do the programming. Whereas they caught it earlier, maybe in a testing program, they wouldn't have had this embarrassment. So let me go through another one that talks about AI. And I have this artificial intelligence with human touch. So this is talking about how AI is helping with human elements and dealing with humans. And I just thought it kind of interesting that we just talked about AI and ethics and how sometimes there is there is a bias in AI. So this one talks about how AI lacks the human touch necessary to delight customers, and there needs to be a blend of AI to deliver automation with an emotional connection. So let me give you some of the key recommendations that they had in this, and it talks about all different kinds of things that you can do with AI. So some of the recommendations, let me get to it here, are start with strategy and end with technology. So today, AI engagement strategies are being led by various organizations within a company, from marketing to customer experience to IT and operations, and have the potential to deliver a fractured customer experience. Companies should take a step back from siloed initiatives and articulate at a company-wide level the end goals for AI. I can't emphasize this enough. That should be done for all technologies, not just AI. We live in a siloed world, and if you do that with AI, you're going to have biased AI. You're going to have something that won't delight the customer because it didn't have the marketing approach. It was only done by technology. And so we need to include everybody at the table at the beginning. It says ensure that customer-facing initiatives around AI align with company strategy. So look for small wins. It's impossible to make all processes more intelligent at the same time. Instead of falling victim to endless analysis, identify a set of key processes or points of engagement that matter to your customers or to your business. For example, using AI to eliminate the overhead of case disposition or to handle simple questions like password resets quickly adds up to significant cost savings. So if you make your AI very simple and add on to it, you will delight your customers more than if you try to do everything and then it fails miserably. Using these improved processes as proof points and ensure that you can measure the results. Define your routing, escalation, reporting, and interaction data management in the context of both the bots and humans. When designing your customer engagement strategies, keep in mind that not every interaction warrants a chatbot and that not every interaction can be successfully completed with AI. You've got to understand that when you go in there. So you need marketing folks, you need end users, you need everybody in there trying to debate whether it needs to be done with an AI or whether a human needs to step into it. So some of the questions they asked is, do you have the logic in place to determine when an interaction should be routed to a virtual agent and when it should not? Do you know what happened the last time the customer chatted with your bot? Can you use that in real time to route it appropriately? If an automated conversation needs to be escalated to a live person, can you make a seamless handoff? What happened if no live agents are available? Do you have the real-time access to agent information? I think you're kind of getting that. So this was done by Forrester, and I highly recommend that you look at this. It's a free download, and it's got an executive summary, which I thought was very helpful, and I just went to you about the key recommendations. So some of the key findings that they found, and this is in the executive summary, is enterprise adopt AI as solutions to improve both customer and agent satisfactions ahead of cost savings. Company adopts solutions ranging from automated self-service, that's 43%, chatbots are 34%, and virtual assistants 42%, etc. Human agents are still superior in understanding emotions and building trust. At this point, AI can't see emotion. And then blending AI with human agents allow enterprises to achieve the strengths of both. So if you know how to blend AI with people, then you'll be very successful. So let me go to one thing that I've covered in a previous podcast, and that was called Semantic Scholar. I just wanted to go back and look at it. And Semantic Scholar is something that is a search engine, but it's a search engine for academic papers. And they've done a lot to it right now. So right now they have trending research papers. And you can also tag things if you create a sign-in. You can tag things and you can follow things. So for example, if I'm looking for things on project management and I enter that search tag in there, it will automatically send me emails daily or weekly, depending on what I want, on new things that have come out in project management. So I highly recommend that if you're doing research, whether you're a practitioner or whether you are an academic, that you go through this and look for things. It's Semantic Scholar. That's SEMANTIC, and that's Scholar. It's very, very good, and I use it all the time. I highly recommend that you go to PM Current. Follow me on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. I'd love to have you. If you know of anybody or if you are a project manager in any of the areas that we've discussed, please contact me at wanda@pmpower.com. I'd love to have you on a podcast so that we can discuss it. I'd love to hear about things in technology, or if you're working in neuroscience and are talking about brains and the practical aspects of that. Again, I am Wanda Curlee, and you can contact me at wanda@pmpower.com. Also, if you have an event that you need advertised, please let me know. I would be more than willing to put it on my podcast. Thank you again. Look forward to seeing you next Monday. Take care.